You have seen how to write publisher and subscription node with ROS built-in message. Sometimes you need to define your own message type that suits your application. In this lesson, you will see how to create a custom file, set it up with CMake list and package.xml, and finally test it in a code in the next lesson. So create a message file and use the data to count the number of times the messages are published. If it's more than 10, the counter should reset and change a state variable. So the first thing is to go to our package directory and create a message file. So you open up the terminal and go to the directory, total workspace, src, and then the name of our package is total control. Okay, so we are inside the package right now. And then the next thing we want to do is to create a directory that will hold the message file. Most times this directory is usually called MSG, which is an abbreviation for message. Okay, so we've created an MSG file, and then let's go to the MSG file. Okay, so we are now in the MSG file. So we're going to create a message file inside this MSG directory, and we're going to call it message counter.msg. So to create a file, you use touch and then message counter.msg. All right. So to create message files, you use the touch and then the name of the message followed by the message extension. So in ROS, message extensions are usually .msg, the .msg file. So the naming convention for creating a message is the camel case convention, where you have the C for the capital C for camel and case. Okay, so if you have a message file that is having just one word as its name, then you want to capitalize the first letter and leave the other letter a small letter. But if you have two words combined together, then you capitalize the first one and then the beginning of the first word and the beginning of the second word, and then you join this word together, just as we have in this message counter. So this is the naming convention for creating message files. Now that we have created our message file, the next thing is to put stuffs inside the message file. So we need to put in the real messages in our message file. Let's do that with VS Code. So I'm just going to go back to the workspace and then open VS Code. Okay, so this is VS Code, and our message file can be seen under the MSG, and then here. Okay, so that's our message file. So what we're going to do now is to create some variables. Remember, we're going to use this message file in a particular code or in the next lesson, but then we want the message file to be able to count some numbers and to be able to store some a name, and also want to be able to change state. So we have three variables that is going to stay inside our message file. So the first is an integer, which is 64-bit integer, and we can just call the name count. Okay, so we have another message in the message file called is a string, and we're going to call it string name. And then the last one we're going to create is the one that monitors the state of the message being published. So when the messages are up to 10, then it changes state from true to false and so on like that. So we're going to call it, it's a boolean. So we're going to make it boolean state. Okay, so this is how you put messages inside a message file. Now, there's something you need to know about a message file also. It's that you can actually make comments inside a message file. So in this case, I'm just going to put a comment here. To put a comment, you just use the pound or hash sign to put comment. And I'm just going to say this is a message file, or this is a message counter. So it counts the number. Okay, so you can also decide to put your comments by the side. You can say this is a count variable. Okay, so you can have it this way too, but then I'm just gonna remove it. Then you save your file. Now that you have saved your message file, the next thing to do is to set up your CMake. So because we've created a message file, we need to tell CMake where to look for how to get the message file and what to do with it. Without setting up the message file on CMake, ROS, we will not be able to use the message file with ROS. Okay, so to set it up on CMake list, so we just go to the CMake list, and then we set up some stuffs. So the first thing you want to do here at CMake list is to add some packages. Well, anyways, just a package, and it's called ROS ideal default generators. So ROS ideal basically stands for ROS interface definition language. So when you're creating custom messages, you want to create this ROS interface definition languages for custom messages. So I'm just going to put it here, find package. Okay, and then the name of our package is ROS IDL underscore default underscore generators. Okay, so and then you put in the required. So it's a required package to be able to run our custom message. And then the next thing is called the ROS IDL generate interfaces. So when you have added the package, then you can then generate the interface for the package. So I'm just going to tell it ROS IDL generate interfaces, and then you put in the $, project name. Yeah, it's here. So project name and what you want to put inside a project name. So in our own case, we want to add the message file. Remember, the message file is in a folder called MSG, and then the file itself is called message counter.msg. So this is how you set up CMake list for your custom message files. Okay, so the next thing now is to do the same, is to set up package.xml. So we go to package.xml, and then we add the necessary file. So basically, we're going to add three things. The first one is the build dependencies. Okay, so I'm just going to add build depend. No, build depend. So the first one is the build dependencies. And then the build dependencies we want to add is the ROS IDL, which stands for the ROS interface definition language. ROS IDL default generators. So those are the dependencies. Generators. And then we close the build dependency. So the next thing we want to add, Ctrl+C, VP. So the next thing we want to add is called the exec dependencies. So the exec depend, And then what we want to put there is the ROS default runtime. ROS default runtime. While the last one is called member of group. So just going to change this to member, member of group. Then we have member of group. So while instead of the ROS IDL default generators, we put in the ROS IDL interface packages. So this is going to be the ROS IDL interface packages. All right. So basically, we've successfully set up the CMake list and the package.xml file for ROS. So we can now go back to our terminal. If everything is fine, we can go back to our terminal and then we build our workspace. So let's build our workspace now. But don't forget to always save your file. Okay, click on build. So the workspace is building. If there's any kind of error, it's going to tell us hopefully where the error is. So you have to wait. Okay, so we're told that our package has been built successfully. Hopefully there's no error in our code. So don't forget to source the workspace. So I'm just going to source, install, set up the patch. Okay, now that we have sourced it, we can then test and see if our message is ready. To introspect the new message we just created, we use the ROS2 interface because it's the message is an interface, and then we want to show. So now normally if we should use the tab completion, it should help us to figure out the name of our message. So we're just going to use the total control, and then you can see immediately the tab completion already helped us to get the MSG and the message counter. So it means that this file is available in our ROS2 workspace, and ROS2 can actually recognize it. So let's click enter to see what's inside. Yeah, so this is what is inside. This is a message counter, and you can see all the 3 variables we created inside the message files. They are all there. So it's these variables that we're going to use in the next lesson to start writing the Python C++ code with our custom message.